Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to flip a massive assumption you probably have about how the working world operates. We usually divide business into two totally distinct buckets. On one side, you've got the hard stuff, right? The spreadsheets, the math, the burn rates. And on the other side is the soft, kind of messy reality of company culture. Human feelings, morale, and mental health. We just kind of assume that while you can mathematically measure a supply chain, well-being is just an abstract vibe. But what if I told you that fundamental disconnect is actually destroying organizations from the inside out? So is company culture actually a hard science? Well, it's definitely time to bust the myth of universal wellness. For decades now, the standard corporate response to burnout has been this lazy, one-size-fits-all approach. It's basically the corporate equivalent of a Friday pizza party or just prescribing mindfulness to absolutely everyone and crossing your fingers that it works. But company culture isn't just a soft art. It can be measured. It can actually be calculated. And when we ignore the hard data behind human psychology, standard mental health protocols don't just fail. They actively start causing harm. To fix this, we need a massive shift in perspective. Let's be real. Old world management uses this mechanical chainsaw approach. Need to save money? Okay, you fire Dave, you save Dave's salary, and boom, that's the end of the calculation. But new world management, it completely shifts away from just judging those isolated actions and moves toward modeling complex human psychological profiles. Because Dave isn't just a cog in a machine. He's a person with a very specific psychological makeup, and the team he leaves behind has one too. If we don't understand that profile, our so-called efficiency cuts might secretly be bleeding millions in lost productivity. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the universal wellness myth. Second, the algebra of conscience. Third, the unpaid vacation paradox. Fourth, tracking the butterfly effect. And fifth, the formula for stability. Let's kick things off with part one, the universal wellness myth. We've got some incredible global data from the SDTEST to look at here. This pulls from 81 countries across 21 languages with well over 1,000 participants. And what we can do is actually correlate mental health preferences with different psychological value systems. These are known as vMEMEs in spiral dynamics theory. Take a look at the green mindset. They value community, and sure enough, they show a positive correlation with connecting with others to heal. But then look at the blue mindset. They value duty and structure, and they actively avoid connection when stressed. To them, it feels like a total violation of professional stoicism. Meanwhile, the turquoise holistic mindset strongly craves mindfulness. This proves, with hard numbers, that what we call taking care of yourself changes entirely depending on your dominant value system. But here is where it gets wild. Check out this shocking negative Pearson correlation of minus 0.1024 between the orange vMEME, that's your intensely achievement-driven, highly optimized Wall Street or Silicon Valley mindset, and practicing mindfulness. That is well past the critical statistical threshold. As orange logic strengthens, mindfulness literally loses all its value as a wellness signal. This mindset processes mental health through actionable metrics. They want measurable recovery. If you force an orange team to just sit still and breathe, they don't actually relax. Their minds just race to optimize the unmeasurable, causing these terrible secondary stress loops. It leads to burnout disguised as biohacking. If you pull the plug on contemplative signals without swapping in a measurable recovery protocol, the whole system just fractures. All right, moving right along to part two, the algebra of conscience. Now, to actually do this math, you need incredible sensors. Most managers, they only look at step one, visible behavior. Did you hit your sales quota this quarter? But looking strictly at surface behavior completely misses the true internal engine driving that behavior. You have to drop down through motivation, the actual why, down through how they relate to leadership, deep into step four, psychology, where you're assessing real self-regulation and hidden burnout. You could literally have a top performer absolutely crushing every metric in step one, who is entirely burnt out and falling apart in step four. If you aren't measuring the full stack, you are flying completely blind. So how do we pull all that together? We formalize all that messy, chaotic human emotion into a precise, navigable equation called the state vector, or S of t. Think about it like physics. To know where a rocket is heading, you need its exact position and velocity, right? Well, to know where a company is going, you need its psychological vector. You quantify the tribal instincts, that's the purple mindset, the impulsivity, the red mindset, and you calculate the exact mathematical weight of fear and trust in the room, right at this very moment. Which brings us to part three, The unpaid vacation paradox. Let's look at how this plays out on the real world. Say management is in a crunch and decides to implement mandatory unpaid vacation. According to standard business logic, absolutely everyone should hate this, right? You're taking away their money. But the math says otherwise. The exact same management action yields completely opposite results depending on the hidden wiring of the team. A purple, tribal-leaning team accepts it positively. They see it as a shared ritual sacrifice, and it actually builds bonding. A green team accepts it purely out of solidarity, to save their peers from being laid off. But an orange, achievement-focused team? No way. They reject it completely. They see it as a scorecard failure, a roadblock to their career trajectory. And I guarantee you, they will literally start updating their LinkedIn profiles that afternoon. One action, 3 entirely different realities. Now for part 4, tracking the butterfly effect. Let's trace this terrifying, completely invisible chain reaction. Say you hit the button to reduce staff to save $1 million on a spreadsheet. In week 2, obviously, this spikes generalized fear among the remaining employees. But look what happens by month 1. The data's correlation matrix actually predicts an increase in ageism. Why? Because fear activates latent biases. Suddenly, resources are scarce, so the younger staff look at the older staff as expensive deadwood, and the older staff view the younger staff as cheap, inexperienced replacements. It's an entire generational war sparked purely by a spreadsheet decision. And by month 3, this escalates into a total leadership legitimacy crash. Congratulations, you saved on payroll, but you completely destroyed your authority to lead the company. Finally, let's wrap up with part 5, the formula for stability. What you are looking at is the SD Navigator interface, and it's a brilliant example of AI vibe coding. This is a massive tech trend hitting hard in 2026, where you just instruct large language models using plain natural language to build dynamic apps without writing traditional code. This UI literally lets you A/B test your leadership moves against the actual psychological sensors of your team before you do any real-world damage. You feed in a system-aware prompt, and the AI generates these amazing context-sensitive outputs to calibrate wellness and stability. It simulates the transitions, showing you exactly how a policy change will alter the psychological makeup of your entire company over the coming months. It's a total game changer. In this dynamic programming model, which, by the way, is just a mathematical method for solving complex problems by breaking them down into step-by-step optimizations, we see a truly fascinating number, 0.9. This is the mathematical weight of fear in the objective function, often called the J-score. Now, in standard management, saving money is given a huge weight, and employee fear is just treated as a 0, an invisible externality. But this model weights fear at 0.9. That is almost as heavy as financial cost. It proves mathematically that terrorizing your staff with toxic, fear-inducing policies entirely cancels out any financial savings you thought you made. The math literally demands that you be a good, stable leader. We've covered a ton of ground today, from the universal wellness myth all the way to the algebra of conscience. We've seen exactly how standard assumptions, like mindfulness working for everyone, completely break down when they hit intensely achievement-oriented minds. So, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on. What breaks when contemplative signals stop being universal in mental health systems? And beyond that, if an algorithm can process the fears, trust, and well-being of thousands of employees simultaneously, calculating the exact moves needed to stabilize them far better than human intuition ever could, does that make the algorithm the true leader? Or does it just mean that leadership is a profound, beautiful skill that we can finally decode? Take that away and rethink how you measure the soul of your organization. See you next time on The Explainer.